This is the second opportunity we've had to invite a distinguished speaker to address us this year. We've been very lucky. This is part of the ASEAN Bridges Dialogue Towards a Culture of Peace. And at this stage, I'd like to invite our MUN delegate, Han Young, to introduce Professor Prodi.
Fellow students, teachers, and administrators, today it is increasingly hard to ignore world news headlines, from the current Eurozone crisis, ongoing wars in the Middle East, to the latest bloody conflict in Mali. Indeed, rapid globalization means that the repercussions of such events touch the international community as a whole. Today, ISB is honored to welcome an intellect and political figure, a much desirable combination nowadays, who has been and still is at the heart of these events that shape the very conditions of our future. Twice the Prime Minister of Italy and the President of the European Commission from 1999 to 2004, President Romano Prodi has brought about important social reforms in Italy and played a pivotal role in the introduction of the euro and the expansion of the European Union beyond its Western European roots. President Prodi is now the president of the Foundation for Worldwide Cooperation. In addition, he has recently been appointed a United Nations Special Envoy to Mali and the Sahel. His involvement in arguably today's most pressing world issues thus makes his visit an incredible opportunity for us, an international body of students, to equip ourselves with basic knowledge of current events, knowledge that is undoubtedly necessary for us to become global citizens. Please welcome President Prodi.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you for this invitation. I like it. I enjoy it because, well, I've been presented correctly as a politician, but I have always been a professor, you know. I was born in 1939, so I am centuries old, you know. But I started my political life only in 1995. I've always been professor. I lived with the students. I've been professor of economics, specifically of applied economic of industry, studying small and medium-sized business. And I've been a professor in the University of Bologna, Italy, that is reputed to be the oldest university in the world, you know, in the Western world, let's put it this way, you know. And then I had a crazy idea to run for prime minister. But it was absolutely crazy, you know. And I am not joking. We have rented a bus and we started to go around Italy in a moment in which political life was critical, difficult, and unexpectedly, well, in the first months, everybody was laughing and said, what this strange professor is doing. And then I won the elections, you know, it happens, you know. It happens, and in 1996, I became prime minister with a complicated coalition, but with a very, let's say, a government full of young people, very talented, you know, but as it happens in political life, there were split divisions, and so in the end of 1998, I received a non-confidence vote. And you young people, you cannot understand what means a non-confidence vote in a parliament with 630 members, and each of them pass in front of you and say yes, no, yes, no. see, no, see, no. And in the end of the story, I lost 313 versus 312, you know, and so my government ended, but I was asked to be president of the European Commission in Brussels. And then I started I think the most interesting moment of my life, because Europe is a strange animal, you know. The European Union is the greatest, the most important effort to change the political life in the world, you know. Let's say six countries after the war, after the tragedies of the war, when Europe was really in absolute disarray, they decided that life could change. And after centuries and centuries in which in each generation there was a war, because Europe was always in war, they decided to try to stick together and become friends, countries that before they were enemies. You know, we are here in Asia. Don't think that the relation between France and Germany were more friendly than the old relations between Japan and China. The same type of tension, the same type of crisis, you know. But they decided that we could change. And they created, before the common market, let's say only a trade area. Then step by step, we Europeans started to join together more and more. And the number of countries, they increased it they were 6: Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Holland became 9, then 12. And then, you know, when I became president of the Commission is the sort of government of this European Union, we decided to, we had the problem of how to act with the former countries belonging to the Soviet Union. Let's say Europe, after the war, was divided in two parts, the western side and the eastern that was under the Soviet Union grip. And after the end of the Soviet Union, these countries, like Poland, Hungary, the Baltic state, they were completely, let's say, without any direction. And we decided to enlarge the European Union. Now, European Union is 27 member states, 500 million people, 496 million people, if you want to be precise. Well, a small thing compared to China, but anyway, 500 million people is not such a small, and a great protagonist of the world economy. Number 1 in GDP, number 1 in industrial production, number 1 in export, but yet with a lot of difficulties to stick together. And during my mandate, we decided also to have a common currency. And this is the problem that I think we shall discuss together, you know. What means a common currency? It means that different countries, they think that they can work together so deeply that they abandon their previous currency, the Deutsche Mark, the French franc, the Italian lira, and then they adopt a common currency. This means to be linked together more and more. Because remember that, you know better than I do, that the modern state is based on 2 pillars, the army and the currency. If you put together the currency, you change the nature of the state. And so we are in this, but, then the problems increased because of the new global competition of the world, because of the economic crisis, and then we had to tackle the difference between different European countries because Europe is being united, but is not yet united completely. And so now we are in a period of difficulties, but the reality is still going on. And I do think that we probably, we have given an example to mankind how to run, the new politics together. I say maybe because the difficulties are still going on. But in politics, you must try to do better things, if you want to change the world in which we live. Then when I left Brussels in 2005, I came back to Italy. I had another election. Luckily, I gained it again. I had a crisis again, and then I went back teaching. But because of my old age, I was retired, and so in the last 3 years, I was teaching in Brown University in the United States as professor at large, and at the Shanghai Europe-China Business School. So trying to have the experience of the two worlds. But 6 months ago, the Secretary of the United Nations asked me to be his personal representative in Sahel. Sahel is the poorest part, is the poorest part of the world. You know the Africa, the desert of Sahara. South of Sahara, you have the semi-desert area going from the Atlantic Ocean, let's say Senegal, till Eritrea, 6,000 kilometers long, 1,000 kilometers large, with a tragic poverty, the poorest part of the world. If you take the last countries, the poorest country of the world, in the last 10, you find 5 countries of the Sahel, Niger, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Mali, Chad, that make the bulk of Sahel. And because of political problem that I don't want to deepen now, we shall discuss later, this has become an area of terrorism, of not only poverty, but the complete lack of authority and law. And so the Secretary General of the United Nations asked me just to start, because we'll need 20, 30, 40 years to start some project of common development of these very poor states, very poor nation, that being alone, they will never be able to develop. So the work has been to organize the local university, local people to start to think together to future development. And then, I don't know what will happen, in the future. I hope that something good can happen, even if the difficulties will be very, very big. Anyway, this was my life. And of course, I'm happy to have a dialogue with you. You can ask everything except football, because I'm not an expert for that. And my favorite team, Bologna, is performing very badly, and so I cannot be there. But then I am open to all the questions. And thank you so much to be here.
The floor is now open to questions from the student body. If you have a question you would like to ask...
Sorry, can you speak loud, clear, and slow?
The floor is now open to questions from the student body. If you have a question you would like to ask, please line up behind this microphone. Only 4 people in line at a time, please. Once you have received the answer to your question, you can sit down in the seats in the front row, which have been reserved for you. Others can now come to take your place.
President Prodi, when you first oversaw the introduction of the euro, what was the biggest problem you faced and how did you overcome it?
Sorry? Speak loud.
When you first introduced the euro, what was the biggest problem you faced?
Okay. As I told before, the currency is the foundation of the state because it's the economic link of all the citizens, you know. And when we decided that Europe was mature for making a step, let's say a great step in the direction of unity, we started to discuss having a common currency. A long discussion because clearly there were countries with a very strong currency like Germany, countries with weak currency, having a common currency, and this is the point and the weakness we have now. Having a common currency, you have to harmonize all your political decisions. The political decision concerning the economy, let's say, to have some harmonization in taxation, some harmonization in the banking system, and so really build a really one economic system. And, you know, this cannot be done in one shot. So the decision was taken, look, let us build a common currency together and start with the decisions, economic decisions necessary to reinforce, to implement the currency. And, but what happened? That, you know, to change from a concept of nation to a concept of supernation is a long way. And the economic crisis has interrupted, has made this change much more difficult. And so the old difference increased. And now we have a Europe in which we have strong economic difference country by country. Let's say we go from 4%, 5% unemployment in Germany and some states to 30% unemployment in Spain. You know, this is 30% of young unemployment in Spain. This is a little more than that, 33. So this is an enormous difference that you have. And so for this reason, the tensions inside Europe, they increased because to overcome this difference, you must have a great solidarity among government. And of course, you must, let's say, change the political behavior of some countries in which they must improve their technology. In some cases, they must decrease their wage and salary and make sacrifice. And other countries that must help with financial aid the countries in need. And this is a very difficult process. Last summer, we were really in danger that this fantastic achievement could collapse. But luckily, in the last moment, solidarity started to move ahead, you know, and the European Central Bank made decisions that are helping this process. And so now I don't fear that there will be a collapse of the currency. I think that the euro will go on, and it even too strong in the international financial market. This is the contradiction of the problem, you know. The euro is from one side weak because of the difference in policy and the real situation of different states, but in terms of relation with the dollar, it becomes stronger and stronger, you know, and this is, we live in this strange contradiction, but this is the reality of Europe today. But remember that, I repeat, in my opinion, the worst is over. We shall read for years again that euro has difficulties, but I don't see the real danger of a collapse. So in the world currency, we shall have, of course, still the dollar dominating, but side by side with the dollar, the euro will have more and more strength. I want to remember you that probably you will understand how important it is. When we started we decided to have the euro, I used to have a meeting with the Chinese president every year, the European Commission, the European Council, and the Chinese president, we were meeting. And I do remember how he was surprised by the idea that the European countries decided to have one currency only. And in that discussion, the real problem was that, well, if you do that, you will change the history of the world, because you have not only one dominant currency, but you have side by side two dominant currencies. And this was the observation. For China, will be important because in the future, I think this was his idea, we shall have the dollar, the euro, and probably the Chinese currency. Let's say to change from what is called the monopolar world, in which there is one dominant power, to a world in which there are many players. And we are in the delicate moment of world history in which we are passing from one player, United States, to a multiplayer. And remember, these are very, very difficult historical moments, because you must use wisdom, you must create a new world, and the currency is part of this new reality. This is why the euro is not only an economic problem, but is a very, very important political instrument.
Thank you.
I have two related questions. So the first is austerity the key to ending the Eurozone crisis? Is austerity the key to ending the Eurozone crisis?
The Eurozone crisis, I repeat, how?
Austerity.
Well, austerity. Well, let us try to give an example. I told you before that clearly in some of the weaker states of Europe, mainly the south part of Europe, you need also to make sacrifice, to also, I hinted to the necessity to decrease wages and salaries. Why? Because if you are in one economic area, you must have similar costs, you must have similar behavior of the economy. If the productivity, the efficiency of the system is lower, clearly you are obliged also to make sacrifice to lower your wage and salary. But I think that, and this is my answer to your question, we have gone too far with the austerity. Because there is a moment in which austerity is needed in order to balance the political and economic situation. But then when you go beyond a level that is happening in Greece, in my opinion, and probably even in Spain and Italy, you damage the economic system in the sense that decrease wage and salary, you decrease the purchasing power of a country, and then step by step you can devastate your economy. So, in my opinion, the correct policy is be severe, control costs, increase the efficiency of the system with the reforms, but not to decrease too much the purchasing power. Otherwise, the country goes in a very, very increasing difficult situation. I'll give you a concrete example. In this moment, the Italian budget, I talk of my country, you know, Italy received, and I received it when I went to the government, and a big outstanding debt, a debt done generation by generation, you know, in time. And, you know, you have to pay the debt. The debts are paid. And so it was necessary to put the budget in order. Last year, with the government Monti, this has been done. But then the policy went beyond that. And so they started to make strong breaks to the economy beyond what was necessary. So now we have a country in which exports are going very well and increasing, but the internal market, because of austerity, has been, let's say, put in such a deep crisis that the GDP is heavily decreasing. And so you have more and more unemployed. Young people, they don't find a job inside the country. And so now too much austerity is bringing difficulty to the country. So the problem of the government in this situation is to find the correct mediation, to give discipline to the country, but then to, let's say, to encourage investments, research and development, and improve the level of the economy in order to be, let's say, to have a sound economic system. Not easy to get, but I think that the austerity in Europe has gone beyond the necessity, and now we need a policy in which you push the new economy to grow, because if you take 2013, the world economy is strange. You have Asia growing very well, China 7.5, 8%. You have Africa waking up, except Sahel, of course, waking from a very, 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 very low level, and so still very poor, but growing 4, 5%. You have United States growing 2%, and Europe growing 0. 0 means 0. And, you know, this is clearly, Europe is at a very average high level of income, and so even if you have some year in which you grow zero, it's not such a tragedy. But if this process goes for too long time, will be a tragedy. So now we need to put an end to this type of austerity and to think also to the growth of the system, because the new generation needs growth.
What was your vision for the future of Italy when it first joined the
Speak
European?
close to the microphone, please.
What was your vision for the future of Italy when it first joined the European Union, and how has it changed now?
European United Kingdom, you mean? You mean United Kingdom, you told me?
No. Qual era la sua visione per il futuro dell'Italia quando è entrata all'inizio nell'Unione Europea e come è cambiata adesso?
Non ho capito. The voice here doesn't arrive so well. Sì, sì. The Italian, how was Italy when we got into the euro? I can answer, of course. Look, the situation was very simple. I hinted before, the country had a very high outstanding debt. Let's say we accumulated a debt in the years. So when I arrived to the government, the Italian debt was 121% of Italian GDP. Let's say that debt was higher than the production of all the year, And it's clear then you have such a high debt, you have to pay the interest, pagare gli interessi, and then it costs a lot of money. And so my effort was from one side to make a very severe budget to decrease the debt, but from the other side, the problem was not to put the economy in crisis, because otherwise everything will collapse, as is happening this year. So it was a very heavy decision. My choice was to have a immediate taxation. I called it Tax for Europe in order to put clearly that it was temporary only, and then to relaunch the economy. Things went very well for a while, and in 3 years' time we decreased 10% the debt, and we passed from 121 to 110, and this was my strategy in order to put the budget in order. And this was what the other European countries were asking. But then, when the crisis came, the government expenditure were increased, and step by step we went back to the same situation at the beginning. So what must be now? It must be done the same thing, from one side, and Monti has done, the new government has done it, one side to be very severe on the expenditure, but I think, as I told before, that we need to have a push of the economy in order to create employment and to give new hope to the new generation. This means this can be done by a country, but we need, and it is clear, and this is the difficult political problem, a solidarity of all the European countries. And in this moment, the solidarity is not so given for granted. And you have many difference between strong countries like Germany and the others, because even France in this moment needs to have an expansionary policy because the internal situation is not so easy. And then we arrive, I want to send this message, let's say we arrive to the real weakness of the contemporary democracy in Europe, but not only Europe, in United States, everywhere, because the problem is the same that you have now for the budget in United States. For the modern economy, you need long-term decision. You need to spend in education, research and development, and the results come 10 years later. But the elections are tomorrow, you know, and this is the great contradiction of the contemporary democracy. I do remember that when I was discussing this problem with the Chinese foreign minister of the Communist Party, you know, not the Chinese foreign minister, but the Chinese communist responsible inside the Communist Party. It was a very, you know, interesting discussion because he was telling me, look, you have these long-term problems and every day you have elections. Let's say you have local election, regional election, national election, European elections. And, well, my answer was, we like elections, you know. We live on elections. But, and this is very important to think about it. With the opinion polls, with all this, all the elections become important. In the old time, the only important election were the national elections. Now, even the local elections become important because of the opinion poll. People change their mind looking at tomorrow, you know. To give an example, not concerning Europe, when a few years ago the old Ted Kennedy died, he was senator, American senator of Massachusetts, he was Democrat, and the Democrats had 60 members of the Senate versus 40 members of the Republican. So it was a very, very strong and safe majority. But the Democrats lost the senator of Massachusetts, and this changed completely the perception of the local policy. And, you know, this is, and then you put your system in a very, very difficult situation, you know. And so the politician, they look only to the next elections. And when we had the first crisis in the euro, the Greek collapse, it was a problem of 30 billion euros. Big problem, but not so big in a let's say, economic reality of 500 million people and very high GDP. But there were local German elections in a big state called North Rhine-Westphalia, and, you know, the German public opinion was not in favor of helping Greece. So the decision could not be taken and was delayed. And in the 4 months' time, the problem of 30 billion euros became a problem of 300 billion euros, was multiplied by 10 because the international speculation was going on. And, you know, this is one of the problems of democracy that, and we have to think deeply about that, you know, because we need a stable democracy. We need to take the decision in the right moment. We need the sense of responsibility. And you know, you will, in your life, you will have many of these examples. The necessity of taking urgent decision, but the problem of having elections, you know, and this will influence all your life. I do remember that when I was in South Africa, when I was a young professor in that time, I met the Prime Minister in the times of apartheid, you know, and we had half an hour discussion, very interesting, you know, and I was, let's say, telling him how, you know, apartheid was not accepted in the international community, what we were thinking. Then he stopped me and he told gently, look, Professor, I accept all your advice, but not the advice that will prohibit me to be Prime Minister again, you know, and this is not acceptable. And I tell you that this contradiction will be with you, with all your life, you know, the problem of taking unpopular decisions when are needed. This is the most important problem of the contemporary democracy.
If a student was interested in possibly entering the field of politics, how would you suggest that they begin preparing themselves now?
I missed the question. Here we have very straight.
If a student was interested in possibly entering the field of politics, how would you suggest that they begin preparing themselves? Yes, a student.
Well, I have a very simple advice, because, you know, I found many times in my life to ask advice to young people that like politics. First of all, please follow the political life of the country, because politics is the most, I think, the most important, let's say, expression of human beings. You know, politics is life. But the advice I give to young people is, please don't start to be a politician when you are young. Prepare yourself, follow politics, prepare yourself, but please get a role in the society. End your studies, prepare to a profession, be independent in your life, because if you will be dependent for your life from politics, you will be lost, because someday you will be slave of somebody else. Be a good lawyer, be a good businessman, be a good professor, be, you know, a good physician, because then you have your dignity, your strength, your life. If you are dependent by a party machinery, in some moment of your life, you will be obliged to do bad things. You know, this is my advice that I give to young people. So preparation, intellectual. You know, this is an international school, and you know by definition that. But now in the global world, you mean intellectual experience. But be strongly independent in your professional life. Then you can be a good politician.
This is a question about the current situation in Mali. So, do you believe that foreign intervention in Mali can produce lasting solutions, especially from what the international community has learned from Afghanistan?
Look, the Mali situation, not easy to understand. I try to explain, I told you the idea of the Sahel, very poor. And a second message I have to give you, the borders among these states are not, well, they are very clear, but there is the desert. And so they are full of holes, full of, there is no control of borders. And so if you have criminal activities, they go from one country to the other. They, if there is terrorism, as in the last period of time, it's difficult for a state to control it, and second, generally they are very weak countries. Say Mali, 50 million people, but twice the surface of France, enormous, difficult to tackle. And then, third characteristic, you have generally very, very deep ethnical fightings, ethnical different. In Mali and in Niger and so on, you have traditional confrontation between the southern part that are mainly black and the so-called white that are Arabs, Tuareg in the north. And generally the so-called white groups are in minority in terms of population. And so you never had the unity of the state historically. And so this, as a consequence, you had quite a few, three major rebellion in the last 30 years, three major fightings. And, all these fightings ended with some sort of negotiation and agreement, but the agreement have never been respected, So we had a long disequilibrium in the area. But what happened recently? It happened a new event, the Libyan war. You may ask me, what about Libya? Libya is far north, but the army of Gaddafi was, the strength of the army of Gaddafi was composed of Tuareg and people from this area. And Gaddafi was sending a lot of money for political reasons to this area. And when we had the Libyan Spring, the Libyan Revolution, all this military went back to Mali, to Niger, but with all the weapons, and without any economic hope, And so what a big illegal economy has been the substitution of the previous life. And so in this area we have a drug traffic, very, very heavy, kidnappings and ransoms, smuggling, all this illegal, and we go to the core of the problem, because of this situation, this became an attraction for international terrorism. Till 1 year ago, in which the terrorist group became strong enough to occupy militarily the northern part of Mali, which is the city of Timbuktu, that you have read of all the monuments and that. And, you know, I was in Mali when in one day the northern, let's say, terrorists, they started to advance to occupy all Mali. And the French troops were the only one ready and able to react. So I am generally against any war. I am very pacifist, and even in that moment I was trying to have negotiation, you know. But in that moment, the French action was absolutely unavoidable. There was no other possibility. And now what is happening, you know? The French troops have been successfully advancing. They decided that they will withdraw soon to be substituted by African troops. And this is, I think, what is important, because peace in Africa must be under the guarantee of Africans, you know. But the terrorists have flown away. There were very few battles, very few fightings, and so the common fear is that there will be a terrorist area, terrorist groups around all the desert. And this is very dangerous, you know. Probably many of these, they came back to Libya, where the situation, the political situation is absolutely still unset. Libya is full of weapons, full of, you have almost 16 different, I don't say different armies, but groups of people with weapons independent from each other. And so the danger for the future is to have a strong terrorist area. And the international community, for the first time, and this is a very important change, for the first time, the international community is united against terrorism. Everybody is afraid of that. Why, I tell you, for the first time? Thanks to what happened in the recent time. In the Iraqi war, there were deep division between American, British and Italian from one side, and French and German from the other, and Russia from the other side. If you take Afghanistan, the divisions are still deep. Take Libya. The German policy and the French policy were completely different. In this case, inside the Security Council, among the big powers, there is no difference. China, United States, Russia, France, Germany, UK, and I could list even Turkey. So they are all afraid of this terrorism. So the big problem is to exploit this political unit to promote development, to change the situation in order to have, not leave this area to illegal economy, to possible terrorism. So, and this is the mandate that I received to help this process of change that is not only in Mali, but must be in all the area. And I do hope really that this can be a change in world history, in the sense that Africa has always been the battlefield of the great powers, historically, always. Now, Africa is needed. Africa and Latin America, they are needed because are the only place in the world in which you have the land for food, the raw materials for future development, energy for the future. And so we must take this occasion to try to have a cooperation, positive cooperation for the future. Will be possible, I do hope, because from that it will depend our future. And I take the occasion to tell you, look, we don't think to that, you know, but with the development of Asia, with the change of the world, with the increase of population, the problem of not only of the environment, that we have general sensibility, but water, food, will become the problem of mankind. And the next tragedies, if we are not very, 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 very cooperative and sensible, they will become for water. The Nile River arrives dry to the Mediterranean. And, you know, till with the old treaties, the water was divided between Egypt and Sudan only. But there are 9 countries that, you know, now they want to have water for that, starting from Ethiopia, because the Nile is born in Ethiopia, you know. And if there is not an agreement on modern technology of irrigation, of using water in a more efficient way, there will be tragedy. The same thing, it's in the Mesopotamian area. And we can, well, Mekong here, you know, and we must start an international cooperation for these basic needs of mankind. Otherwise, the result will be a tragedy.
Thank you.
President Prodi, as a school, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and coming here to talk with us. We really are honored to have someone like you here today, and I think we all gained something important from listening to you. With all the problems currently going on in our world today, it's nice to know that someone like you exists. It's nice to know that there are still people out there who are willing to make a difference, people who are willing to right a wrong, and people who are not afraid of a challenge. You push for a better world, for our future generations. You set an ideal example for us to follow, and for that, we thank you. As a token of our gratitude, we also have a gift for you.
May I open this? I want to see, eh? Difficult to open, huh? Okay. Thank you.
We hope you enjoy it.
Thank you for this beautiful tie. If you will see some picture, you will see this tie. Look at it. Now, really, I'm very grateful. I'm sorry that, you know, we should need hours and days to discuss this problem, and probably I have given you only a broad idea, but I hope that I open some curiosity, you know, because you will have the world in your hands, and not my generation, but your generation. So you have a big, big, big responsibility.
We'd like to invite those people who asked questions to come to this front, please, and we'll have a quick photo call with President Prodi. We'd like to take a few photos of you.
So happy.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for my...